Hi everyone, I'm Joanna Penn from the creativepenn.com and today I'm here with Ashleigh Gardner. Hi Ashleigh!
Hi.
It's great to have you on the show. So just as an introduction, Ashleigh is the head of content at Wattpad, the world's largest platform for discovering and sharing stories. And if you haven't heard about Wattpad, everyone, it's about time you did. So today we're going to talk a bit about it. So Ashleigh, start by just giving us the rundown on Wattpad and why authors should care about it.
Sure. So Wattpad is the world's largest community for reading and sharing stories. We have 24 million users, and the majority of those are readers. About just under 10% are users that are writing to some extent, and many of those writers are also reading. I think that one of the very simple things about Wattpad that makes it very different from most blogging platforms is it's very interesting how quickly we've all gotten used to reading things in reverse chronological order. And I think that, that definitely makes sense for news and for update focused content, but it doesn't really work well for things that are narrative. So what Wattpad really allows you to do is to kind of create posts along a narrative or a story and communicate with all of your users and followers. So right now we have 24 million users. They're, creating 8 million comments a month. They're highly engaged. Our average session length is 30 minutes. So our users are coming to Wattpad to read, to discover new writers. Unlike other social networks where they're just checking in to look at pictures or to talk to their friends, they're coming to connect with writers. Writers are the stars of our platform. And one thing that's very interesting about Wattpad's usage is that 85% of our users are accessing Wattpad through mobile devices, through, phones and tablets. So it's a great way to reach readers right where they're reading in small pockets of time. We really have optimized the site for that. And, serialization is a huge part of the platform and really helps connect with readers on the go. So we allow writers to serialize stories chapter by chapter, and every time they post a new part of their story, all of their followers and everyone that's following that story get push notifications directly to their phone. So it's a really great way of kind of keeping those touch points and communicating with your users on a regular basis.
And you mentioned the word blogging, which is the first time I think I've heard you say that with Wattpad, and also social media. So for authors to understand, this is not a publishing platform, right?
Yes, it is a social network. So, we're not a retailer site. We're not a site like Smashwords. Those are, they're doing great things, but it's really about kind of like a storytelling platform is how we would say it. So, I mentioned blogging just as a way of kind of framing all of the other places that people are writing on the web. And I think that what's so different about Wattpad is it allows you to control that narrative, whether it's nonfiction or fiction, to really, guide your readers through which order you'd like them to read, your stories in.
Great, and I think we'll come back to that content because I know some authors are worried about what they put on Wattpad. But let's get back into the kind of the people who use Wattpad. So it's not just this is not just a self-publishing thing, is it? What kind of authors are using Wattpad?
Yeah, I think that we're seeing lots of writers across, different parts of their career. We definitely have a self-expression tier on the site, similar to other user-generated platforms like YouTube or even like Instagram. Most users on our site aren't aspiring to be novelists or to be professional writers. They're just creating fun stories to share with their friends where just likes and attention is all that's, generating their engagement. But it's also a big site for aspiring writers. So people that have always wanted to write a book, it's very daunting to write an entire book, which is usually where the self-publishing industry kicks in. Is once you've written it, there's lots of places to go, lots of places to sell it, to publish it. But that writing process, it's daunting to write a whole book. It's much easier to write a chapter. And we allow writers to write things chapter by chapter, publish them on the site, get instant feedback from our users, on their story. And it's really encouraging to continue to keep writing and to keep continuing your story when there's an audience waiting for it. And then, for self-published writers and indie writers, I think that obscurity can be such an issue. You really want to connect with as many readers and create those super fans. So we see a lot of people, finding ways to engage with new communities on the site. And I think it's a similar behavior to, blockbuster writers. Margaret Atwood is a member of the site. Meg Cabot's a member of the site. And we're seeing a lot of writers want to join to connect with this new community in new ways and experiment with the types of features the site offers.
Fantastic. Okay, so what about the readers? Some people might think, oh, it's just, 15-year-olds or whatever. So what information do you have on the demographics of readers, and which type of books do they enjoy reading?
Yeah, well, core behavior on the site core group is teens, 13 to 18. It's, a no-brainer. If you've got a book directed at teens, you should be on Wattpad because that is where they are reading. But I think that what a lot of people overlook is, 35% of the site is 18 to 30. And we're really seeing a lot of new genres emerge with large presence on the site. Like our romance community is quite huge. Our science fiction community is quite huge. And what's so interesting about Wattpad as well is without the editorial gatekeepers, similar to lots of other things that are happening with self-publishing, we're seeing interesting trends and genres emerge that are very underrepresented in the traditional publishing industry. Urban fiction is something that we see very little of in other places, but has a huge flourishing community on Wattpad.
Wow. And just with the age group there you mentioned, obviously erotica is quite popular. Do you have any adult guideline type stuff?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is common sense. Don't use things that are illegal. We do have, as a user-generated site with millions of stories being added, we do have some, filters that just look for things that are potentially questionable on the, more illegal side of erotica. But if anyone feels that their work's been unintentionally flagged, they're welcome to contact our community team for assistance there. No one on our site is able to join if they're under 13, so it is kind of 13 and up.
Okay, cool. And then what about the different countries in the world? I remember you said something when we met about the Philippines, when I was just stunned about that. So maybe you could talk about the global reach.
Absolutely. So people have downloaded Wattpad in every country in the world. We have readers everywhere, and our growth is, rapid through many of them. The US and Canada and the UK are our largest markets. But as far as country saturation, it's the Philippines, which has been really interesting to watch. So, in the Philippines, we are the number one website and mobile app in the country. So both in the App Store and the Google Play Store right now, more people are downloading Wattpad than Facebook. When you walk into their bookstores, out of the top 10 books that are published, most of those were written on Wattpad and were discovered on Wattpad. We're about to see the first movie be released in the Philippines based on a story written on Wattpad. One thing that we find is fan fiction is global. A lot of the number one stories across many countries feature members of One Direction, which has been, they are popular globally, which has been, really interesting to see. We see a lot of users translating popular stories. And I think that, in the Philippines as well, they have kind of their own mega stars, a couple called Cat Neil, which are these two mega celebrities, and that's their kind of couple name. And they're actually starring in a Wattpad movie now. After, years of fan fiction being written about them, they're embracing that community and are making a movie based on a Wattpad story.
Which is cool, and it just sounds like I know it's completely different. It's written stories, but it sounds like what YouTube was before YouTube got bought by Google. It's almost like stuff like that is just mental.
Absolutely. What makes a good story on Wattpad isn't necessarily what makes a good book. Things that engage people really quickly. We're seeing all of these really interesting new types of writing emerge as well. So that aren't necessarily something that you would sell, but are great at getting your writing noticed. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of creepypastas, but it's a type of, horror writing that is very popular online. And it's very similar to urban legends, but they're all very, technologically focused, really geared to, teens and millennials today. And that's something that, again, isn't something that you can get a book about, but it's a flourishing all over on Wattpad.
Wow, it's so cool. And I mean, I've got a couple of books on Wattpad, and but I really have only done it in a kind of here's my finished books and now I'll put them up there kind of way. But the way you talk about it's a much more free environment. Now I know people listening will be like, but how can I put my stuff out there when it's not edited? Won't it make me look like a bad writer?
I don't think that we see that at all. One thing that I would encourage anyone to do is look at some of the comments on Wattpad stories, and you've received so many of them yourself. I think that you'll see that, the comments are overwhelmingly very positive and very supportive comments. If you're looking to have works edited as well, mentioning it in your profile, people are welcome to give feedback. But I think it's really, the culture of the site is really about storytelling. People don't critique grammar. They, might mention something in the comments, but it's really about the characters and the plot and the emotions. And that's what really catches people. I think that we see a lot of works in progress being serialized on the site. That's something that people are sharing. You're definitely right that some people, they might not be comfortable with that. And, finished works are something that we see be very popular too.
And there have been, you talked about the Philippines, but there has been a couple of kind of big deals, haven't there, out of Wattpad that people might be interested in. Maybe you could just talk about those.
Absolutely. In North America and the UK, we've seen so many book deals of writers that have, went on to, become very popular on the site, become celebrities on Wattpad, and been approached by major publishers. A notable example of that is Beth Reekles in the UK. She was just named one of Time Magazine's most influential teenagers of 2013 on their kind of top 100 list of the year. And, she was a 16-year-old girl in Wales who had discovered Wattpad and was very frustrated in the stories that she saw marketed to herself and her peers within the traditional publishing industry. Everything was paranormal romance, which, she wasn't into that. Or when she looked at things about kind of real teenagers, it was all either, really tame and innocent and censored and not like what her experience with her friends were, or completely on the other side of that and Gossip Girl and, wealthy and insane and doing things that her and her friends would never dream of. And she wrote a very kind of authentic teen experience story that, was a romance and wasn't, completely innocent, but was a very, realistic telling of teen life. And it went on to gain a huge following on the site and, went on to be published by Random House. So she is now 17 years old, starting university with a 3-book deal. But we've also seen a lot of adult writers as well join the site too. A lot of people who were told by agents or publishers that there wasn't an audience for the story, or they didn't feel there was a market for it. And then they're able to go back to them and say, actually, I've posted it on Wattpad. These are the numbers of this story. This many people have read it. This many people have loved it. We provide a lot of data back to our writers on stories. You can see chapter by chapter what your audience is like and how many people not only have read your book, but where they read it. Which chapters did they like? Where are the comments? And that's data that a publisher has never had when making a decision on what to publish. You can find out the demographics of your audience, and we're happy to work with writers to help, get them the stats they need if they are pursuing a book deal. So we regularly have publishers now also coming to us too, asking us about, what types of trends we're seeing, which writers do we think are ones that are really going to take off, and we've got a lot of data at our hands to help identify those people. Harlequin's been running contests on the site. They've spent, in the fall, they were looking for their next new adult writer to write a romance kind of targeted at the university age. And they had planned on offering book deals to 4 people from the site, but they were so overwhelmed by the quality of content that they saw come through it. They ended up offering 6 book deals with an offer to work with the 7th to, develop her idea. So it is something that publishers are coming to regularly and have been, completely impressed with the quality of work they're seeing from our writers.
Wow, it's so cool. Every time I speak to you, I'm like, must do more on Wattpad.
Yes, we'd love to see you do more on Wattpad.
I know, I really should. I'm just like, I actually have a to-do thing to put a short story on. So just so people know, I have Pentecost on there in chapters, which is now available permanently free on Kindle and things. But I also have One Day in Budapest, which I sell on other sites. Now, maybe you could explain how Wattpad sells books for authors. Like why, obviously Pentecost is free everywhere, but I sell One Day in Budapest. So, how does that work for people so they know?
Yeah, I think in a few different ways. I think at Wattpad, what we're really great at is providing an audience and helping writers build a fan base. I think it's a great platform to do that. When you have that attention and that audience, I think it's really important for writers to be aware of that and to really control what they want that audience to do. I think calls to action are really important. A lot of writers just put stuff up and then complain that no one's purchasing their work. And it's like, well, are you letting them know that? Let your audience know where you have books available, let them know where they can get it. We've also seen a lot of writers playing around with serialization, and we've been calling that kind of the Candy Crush effect, because we'll see a writer take a story that's available for sale and serialize it chapter by chapter each week and remind people at the end of each chapter, I'll be updating again next Tuesday, but if you can't wait to find out what happens in this cliffhanger, the story is available for sale at these retailers. I think with serialization being so huge on our platform, it's really important to think about when the user gets to the end of the chapter, what do you want them to do? Because they can't go on to the next one like a traditional book. And it's a great time to control what you'd like them to do at that point in time. Do you want them to share a review if they're enjoying your work on a traditional platform? Do you want them to, share the work with their friends and spread the word? Do you want them to join your Facebook page to enter a contest or to purchase a new work? And I think, that communication and that discussions with your fans is so important in selling works on the site. We also see a huge fit around series works. I think that's a place where there's really a natural fit. In the traditional publishing industry as well, it's something that when there's 5 or 6 books in a series, it's a known problem that lots of people, or a lot of people might like the first one. Moving that entire audience from the first book to the second book becomes a little bit difficult. And it's hard to sell new readers on a second book when they haven't read the first book. And your pool of people to market to gets smaller and smaller as you go down the series. But if you can really open up that funnel on that first book, you want as many people to read it as possible to find those super fans that are going to go on and purchase the rest of the series. And that's something that, all of the data that we've looked at with publishers is really showing that Wattpad's a great fit for that type of content.
And also I should add, on the metadata, you have metadata, keywords and all of that. You can actually add a link there to your Amazon page or Kobo page. You can link to anywhere, right?
Absolutely. And one feature that we also offer is that users can, share email messages with all of their followers at any point in time. So, if you would like to email your followers and send them, links to your books on sale or a new release or pre-orders, taking advantage of that and continuing to keep in touch with them is something that's really important. And using the serialization features creatively is also really important. Your book never has to end, unlike something that you're selling through a traditional retailer where the user might download it, they might read it, they might get halfway through, they might forget about it when a new book comes out. You can continue to update a chapter at the end as the details on your series change. Maybe when you shared that work on Wattpad, you didn't have any other books available, and then suddenly you're releasing something new. You can add a chapter at the end of that work that, has details about your new book. And that's something that, again, because we're so mobile, because we're optimized for serialization, all of the followers of that work, everyone that has it in their library, gets a push notification directly to their device. So it's a great way to kind of keep in contact and keep your readers engaged.
Yeah. Wow, it's so cool. And then, because image marketing is becoming a big deal at the moment, and you have, pictures and video, and I saw something around like people actually designing covers per chapter. Is that right?
Absolutely. We allow users to attach, all of our writers can add a YouTube video and an image to each chapter. So we've definitely seen writers, create new covers with each chapter. We've also seen a lot of great, fan engagement. I think the new reader, really likes to get involved with things that they're a fan of. So, part of that is fan fiction. We see users, read stories they love and want to create, are inspired to write about something similar, but not everyone's a writer. But a lot of readers are really good at Photoshop. And so we might see them, try to express gratitude with a writer by sharing art. That's another thing where calls to action can be really good. Mentioning, I'd love someone to, make a cover for this is a great way of engaging them. Or I'm looking at all of these awesome, book trailers that I'm seeing all of these users do. I don't have one. If anyone that's reading can help me, I'd love to chat. And, that's something where we definitely see fans become this marketing machine for writers. We're seeing, Wattpad trending across other social networks too, because once they create it, they want to share it. So they're sharing links on Instagram of the art they've created. They're sharing, their book trailers that they've made for other writers on YouTube. I'd encourage you to search for Wattpad on YouTube, and you'll see, tons of different Wattpad trailers that have been created. Even across places like Vine, we're seeing people make soundtracks for their books on 8-track. It's really become this whole, trending across different social media for Wattpad fan-created works.
So good. Now, I just want to address just still back on the selling thing. So people, I know the questions come up before. If people are in KDP Select, for example, if they've signed, to be exclusive to Amazon, they can still use Wattpad, right?
Yeah, I can't talk about the specifics of Amazon's contract because it is something that isn't necessarily enforced evenly, or, even things change quite frequently. You'd always have to check your contracts with your specific retailers before pursuing things with the same works. But we have many writers on the site that are, sharing things both on Wattpad and on KDP. I think that, Wattpad isn't a retailer, so we're not a peer of kind of other retailers. We are a promotional site.
Yeah, well, that's I think that's the big point, that you're not a retailer, so that kind of makes it different. So everyone's now fired up and like ready to go. Yeah. So how do people actually start using Wattpad? What's the kind of 1, 2, 3?
Absolutely. So I think one thing to really remember is that Wattpad is a social network. I feel like that's the biggest mistake that we see writers make when they join the site. So when you first join any social network, whether it's, Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, I think following people and understanding a bit about the culture of the site is something that's really important. We allow users to search, you can search users based on keywords. You can search for, different works on the site and find stories that you think are similar to your writing. And I would encourage you to follow those writers, as well as following people that are reading and are engaged with that work, because those are the people you want to reach out to right away. I think that a lot of writers join the site and just post writing and then, feel like, well, nothing's happening. No one's finding it, but it's really important to, build that momentum early on. And then that's when the machine takes over and, other people begin to find it. But when you just join, an analogy that I've been using is if you just joined Twitter and you didn't follow anyone and you didn't retweet and you didn't reply to anyone and all you did was just broadcast, it would be very hard to find you. And someone might start following you and they might recommend and it might take off, but it's going to be a lot harder than if you make an effort to push yourself out to the right people. And it's the same thing on Wattpad. So I think, posting works, encouraging different users to read it, joining things like the clubs and finding out what's going on there, but really looking for works that are similar and really, going native and joining those communities is so important. To post works, it's quite a simple process of cutting and pasting works that you might have in other places. Or we also see a lot of writers writing natively if there's something new that you'd like to write and share with the Wattpad community. We allow users to create tags for their works as well. I would really encourage you to, I think that something that we see traditional writers make mistakes about sometimes is they use industry terms to describe their writing in a way that users don't search. So, the community on Wattpad, similar to, you mentioned YouTube earlier, and I think that's a good example. People don't go to YouTube and type in the names of movies that are out there because they're not expecting to see those on YouTube. They're looking for themes. They're looking for keywords of something that's included in it. And we see our users searching the same way. They search for our plot points. They don't search for titles. They, are maybe searching for celebrities if it's a fanfic to make sure that's included. But, one of the most popular mistake, or not popular, I haven't seen a lot of people do it, but it was something that was I bring it up all the time as a perfect example of this, is someone joining the site and tagging their work juvenile fiction. And I have never seen any user ever search for the term juvenile fiction that's looking to read that type of content. They're writing, teen love or teen, things like
Direction.
That. Exactly. Yes, that's my search engine optimization tip. Tag it with One Direction.
Right, I'm going to write a One Direction thriller, kill them all.
It would be super popular. I would love to read that.
See, I don't even know One Direction at all. So I'm going to have to go look them up. That's terrible. I'm so old.
No, but I learned a lot about them when I joined the site. I have a favorite now and everything.
Okay.
But to be honest, I do think that that's one of the smartest things that I've seen a writer do on the site was someone had written a story about a teen rock star. It was an original fiction, and as a way of introducing users to the character, the first few chapters was about this girl going to a One Direction concert and kind of including this fan fiction element into the beginning to get the fan community hooked and then bringing them along to an original fiction story. I think that's a great promotional technique when you're thinking about writing original content on Wattpad. Who are the communities you're trying to reach? What are they interested in? And how can you bridge those two elements between your writing and what you're seeing them read on Wattpad?
Well, I can go and have a look, obviously, but what does Margaret Atwood do on Wattpad?
So Margaret Atwood did a really interesting project with another, really prominent writer, Naomi Alderman. And what they had decided to do was to write an original fiction for the Wattpad community. And it was a serialized horror story. It started in, October, and it was kind of a post-apocalyptic zombie story. And they went back and forth, posting from different points of view, chapter by chapter, and, alternating back and forth who was writing that week. It was something that they, again, serialized because they knew serialization was such a big part of the platform. And it was, shared as a complete story over, I believe, 12 weeks. But again, I can reconfirm that. And, it was something that we saw be hugely popular on the site. It was a really good experiment for them both that drove a lot of fans to their profile, a lot of, a new influx of readers to both of their works that maybe weren't as aware of them before. And it's something that they've continued to use to promote new works that they have. When Margaret Atwood released her new title, Mad Adam, she wrote an essay for the Wattpad community on what had inspired her to write it.
Oh, okay, cool. I'm so good. After our call, I'm going back on Wattpad. Okay, and then, you've given us loads of ideas, but are there any other tips from the most successful, sort of Wattpad users? You have given us lots, but are there any sort of other tips off the top of your head?
I think, to really keep the readers in mind, when you're serializing, let readers know what to expect so that they know not everyone will be, jumping in at the same time. So saying, I update every chapter on Tuesdays, ending each chapter with the call to action is one of, I think, the best tips from our most successful writers and how we see them use the platform, and continually, encourage comments, ask users what they're thinking at the end of a chapter as even a way to encourage comments and reply to the comments that you get. That's the best way to build steam. I think to remember that it's a social network is so important, and every interaction that a user has with you on Wattpad, all of their followers see as well. So, the audience now has an audience, and you really want to encourage them to engage because that's what causes those, viral effects of all of their followers seeing it and coming, and it really, blows up from there.
And I guess we've seen Wattpad just kind of grow and grow. Do you have any sort of view as to what's going to happen over the next year? I know it's been a mad year for you guys. Just
Yes.
The growth has been huge. But in terms of your view of what's happening with social media, so for example, Facebook, everyone's really annoyed right now because of this whole, everything's disappeared and you have to boost things to get attention, and you see that's more of an advertising platform than a social network all of a sudden. So what do you and Wattpad see as the kind of what's going to happen in the next year with social media and all of this stuff?
Well, we're definitely seeing, our growth continues to explode. We're seeing a lot of growth across different genres. I see that's being something that's really going to change on Wattpad. We continue to experiment based on what we see users doing and what we think is going to happen. I think we've been really shocked to see the emergence of new social networks and how users are interacting with them, and finding ways to bring that into the experience as well. I mentioned earlier, all of this fan contributed, world to the story. How can we include that and make that more discoverable and allow users to attach it to the works in some way? So that's definitely something that we're interested in. But a lot of, where where we go as a company is being driven by our users and, discovering new ways that they're using it and what we're seeing our writers and our readers do and how they use and share Wattpad.
And the analytics you've mentioned, about the genres and all of that, is this something that you guys share on your site, or is this kind of secret information?
You know what? We are as public as we can about information. A lot of it is, when asked or when we come up with ideas that we'd love to dig into, we go and we have a fantastic, data analytics team that works with a lot of our reading data to discover new things. We're trying to share more of that with writers in a more scalable way. But for now, I'd encourage you to look at kind of our year in review, because there's some really interesting stats there in how many users joined Wattpad, what their behavior was like, and just, some of the numbers are astounding. It's like you have to recount the zeros every time you have a look at it.
Well, I've heard you speak a number of times in the last year, and yet every time you speak, the numbers have just gone up by amazing factors.
Well, I joined in April of last year, so not even a year ago. And I remember, my first London book fair with Wattpad, being really excited to tell everyone we were at 13 million. And, in January of the next year, we're at 24. It's been a fantastic year, and, we continue to grow at a huge rate. So looking forward to this year too.
Yeah, no, me too. And I really think that reliance on analytics and data, it means that you're doing the right thing, and obviously that's what Amazon does, and that's what Kobo's doing, and this is what the big companies are doing. And I often think this is what we need as authors. Like, we need this information. So, and I know on the back end of the authors thing at Wattpad, you can see on your own books, obviously, in the number of comments and that type of thing. But yeah, it's so fascinating, your insights into this.
Yeah, we're only learning more, right? The data part's only going to get better for the industry as a whole as we discover more of this. It's for years all we had access to was what people bought, but now we're learning more about what they actually do, what they want to read, where do they stop reading? How many of those books that were bestsellers did people probably only read to the 3rd chapter and never finish? I think that's really interesting data to know.
Oh, that's so true. But yeah, no, it's so true. But that was brilliant, Ashleigh. I'm very excited about this. I think the big the resistance is that it is another social network. I think that, but as you say, it's not just stick a book up in a series of chapters. It is an involvement in the same way about Goodreads, and Twitter. Like you say, you can't just push. You have to, and that's, I guess, writers will be going, oh my goodness, that's more time.
Yeah. Well, I know there's definitely some fatigue around all of the different ones. But it's also a sense you don't need to do all of them. I think more people need to look at which ones are working for them and which ones are the best for what they're trying to accomplish. They might find one more fun, but they might find one sells more books, or another one, is helping them, create more reviews. One thing that, as much as, I'm an active tweeter and love Twitter as well, are you creating fans of your tweets or of your online presence, or are you creating fans of your writing and of your work, what you're producing? And I think that those are two very different followings, and how you interact with those followings is quite different.
Well, I'm kind of keen to maybe try it more as a writing practice, as in start a new story on Wattpad rather than just think it has to be finished works.
Oh, I'd love to see you do that. I think that we see a lot of writers using it as a way to experiment, test things out, see what's resonating with the audience, seeing the audience reaction to the story. Sometimes when they see speculation in the comments of where the story is going, they purposely try to make it go in a different way. So it's not, what users were expecting. But, we definitely have lots of works in progress on the site, and it's a really fun way to experience it as a reader as well. I love getting those push notifications to my phone that, Margaret Atwood has, created a new chapter on Wattpad. It's a really fun thing to see, especially on your commute home when you can just jump in and have something fun to read right away.
Yeah, and I think that fun aspect, because I'm in the first draft at the moment of big novel, and it's like that you lose that kind of fun aspect, and I kind of think, well, maybe this is a way to not be so obsessive about all of that, and but yeah, I'm really going to have to think about it in a different way. But no, it's been brilliant talking to you. So where can people find Wattpad online?
Yes, so it is wattpad.com and it's wattpad.com.
Fantastic, brilliant.
And
Thanks
if
so much.
anyone has any questions as well, they can contact my team at writers@wattpad.com is the best way. If you have any questions as an indie or professional writer on how to be using Wattpad, we're happy to help.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for your time, Ashleigh. That was great.
Thanks so much.